Alright guys, hello. This is my first time trying to screencast anything ever, and a lot of you who are a lot more techie than me probably know a lot more about this than I do. If you see something that I'm doing that's just like really annoying or obvious that I have no clue that I'm doing it, if you'd shoot me a message, then that would improve everyone's experience. I've got a little cheap microphone. It was about $10, so it doesn't cancel out all of the background noise, but I have found that it helps a lot. So I hope that my voice is at a good level. That's something else you can tell me. I really, really want feedback for how this sounds, because I want these videos to be useful to you and not just annoying. So this is a slideshow that I would give in class, and it's about artistic balance. And this week, that's what your assignments are going to be about, is balance. Balance is one of the principles of design. So we've talked about the elements of art, and that was what we did the third quarter, our first quarter, I guess. So the elements of art are things like color and line and shape, things that make up an artwork, whereas the principles of design are ways that you use the elements of art to manipulate or to create an artwork. So balance is one of those principles of design. So what is balance? Balance is mainly concerned with equalizing visual weight in a work of art. So just like things can have weight, imagine holding an anvil versus holding a feather, visual things can have weight as well. We're going to talk more about that. So imbalanced artworks make the viewer feel uneasy, whereas a balanced artwork gives you that sense of ease. Sometimes, though, artists want viewers to feel uneasy, so they will intentionally make something imbalanced. So like I said before, rather than weighing objects on a scale to see if they're balanced in art, we go by what we see. Now, 2D art, two-dimensional art, is a lot more, I think it's intuitive and a little subjective as to where the balance can be found. Three-dimensional art, like sculptures, they're a little bit easier to tell, because if you're viewing something in 3 dimensions and you are also in 3 dimensions, then you have that common ground. So here's an example of a piece where the artist intentionally wanted people to feel the unbalance. So the purpose of this sculpture probably is to make you feel a little weird, because it's a cube. We know that cubes usually sit on one side, on the bottom. This cube is standing up on its corner, and it's probably pretty heavy, right? Because it's made out of metal, I would assume anyway. And so the people walking by it are probably feeling uneasy, like it could fall over at any time. And that was the artist's intent. So balance can be used as a way just to make your piece look good, if you want to balance everything. Or it can be used like this as the main focal point of the piece, like the purpose of the piece is that it's imbalanced. So different colors can have different visual weights. So we've got the color wheel in the right-hand corner there. I forget that I can use the cursor. So when we look at the color wheel, just ask yourself, which color is the heaviest? So just look at the color wheel. Which colors feel the heaviest? Your answers are going to be different. To me, red feels really heavy. Like it feels like it takes up a lot of visual weight. It's also really saturated, right? Compared to this purple here, which is kind of dull. So we could say that saturation has different weight too. Now looking at the color wheel, which color feels the lightest to you? Which color feels like it would weigh the least? Everyone's probably going to say yellow. Most people would say yellow. That's not the correct answer, but it's one of the correct answers. And then value. So remember, value is how light or dark something is. So we have our value scale up here. This one's a lot more cut and dry. So which side of the value scale feels the heaviest? Most people are going to say the right side, right? The black over here feels the heaviest. And that would make the lightest weight be the white or the lighter grays. So different colors and values can have different visual weights. There are two different types of balance. One of them has a subcategory. So we're about to talk about those. And I know I'm 5 minutes in. I have a little timer here recording. And I will not go longer than 15 minutes, I promise. So just stick it out with me. This is going to help you do assignment number 1 and assignment number 2, I think. Alright, so number 1 we have symmetrical balance. This one's easier to understand, so that's why we're starting with it. So symmetrical balance is when equal or very similar elements are placed on either side of a central axis. So what that means is that if you could draw an imaginary line down part of the work, the elements on the left and the right side, or let's say this were a different piece and our imaginary line was in the middle here, it would be the top or the bottom. They're very, very similar. So on this one, it's symmetrically balanced vertically. So if we were to draw that line down the middle here and fold it in half, it would more or less match up, right? So if we look at color, is color symmetrically balanced here? Orange, orange, green, black, black, white, white, red tones, red tones. Yeah, the colors are pretty much symmetrically balanced. So what about value? How light or dark something is? Light, 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 dark, dark. The middle figure here is definitely symmetrically balanced. Now, some people might say, well, there's one person here and there's one person and a baby here, and then these faces in the back, they don't match. It doesn't have to be exact. It can be. Like when we see symmetrical balance in nature, we're thinking of things like butterflies. They're pretty much exact. In art, you've got a little bit more leeway. So the visual weight is equally distributed vertically or horizontally. So if you took your hand and you covered up the right side of this painting, and then you took your hand and you covered up the left side of the painting, the visual weight feels the same. So just looking at this painting, you should feel like everything's in order and nothing's like out of place. So we've all heard the word symmetry before, and you learn this at a young age. But just to remind you, symmetry means that two halves have a balanced composition. They're either identical and they mirror images of each other exactly or almost exactly. So if we go back to this slide, that's what we're talking about. So here's a piece by Leonardo da Vinci. It's a painting, and it's called The Last Supper. You may have heard of it or seen it. It's pretty famous. It is symmetrically balanced. So before I show you, just think about where that imaginary line would be if you were to fold the piece in half, sort of. And yeah, that imaginary line again would be straight down the middle here. So this painting is supposed to be, just a little background, it's supposed to be depicting the Last Supper of Christ, and his apostles are on either side of him. The people are different, so this person is not the same visually as this person. This person's not the same as this person, and so on and so on, but they are approximate, right? And colors are balanced, so we've got some blues over here, we've got some blues over here, we've got some pinks, we've got some pinks. The background is definitely symmetrically balanced. And just a little aside here, if you're interested in like conspiracies, there's a big conspiracy about this painting and how instead of, I think the Apostle John is what most people is what most people think this apostle is. There's a conspiracy that this is actually like Mary Magdalene and that Da Vinci was trying to say there was like a romance there or something. So if you're interested in that, it's kind of a fun rabbit hole to go down. This is a style of art called op art, like an optical illusion. Op art is a very precise way of painting or making art, and it relies heavily on symmetry. Alright, so radial balance is a subcategory of symmetrical balance. So when you look at an artwork, it's either symmetrically balanced or asymmetrically balanced. Within the symmetry, though, within symmetrical balance, you can have radial balance. So radial balance means that the elements of a design radiates out from the center. So it has a very strong focal point or emphasis. And then instead of drawing a line down the middle or down the side to fold it over, with radial balance, ideally, you could draw a straight line to divide the piece evenly anywhere, and it would fold over. You're going to be using radial balance in your project. We're going to be making mandalas, or some people call them mandalas. I say mandala. Radial symmetry is a variation of symmetrical balance, which is what I said, in which the elements are arranged equally around a central point, as in the spokes of a wheel, or the ripples made in a pond where a stone is dropped. Thus, radial symmetry has a strong focal point. So when you look at something that's radially symmetrical, it really draws you into the center. So we will learn a lot more about, not really about radial symmetry, but we're going to learn a lot more about mandalas tomorrow, and you're going to start making your own. This is actually what you're going to watch tomorrow. This is a Tibetan mandala, and this is made of sand. So all of these colors are different colors of sand. It's painstakingly made. It takes weeks to make. You guys are going to watch a video of some Tibetan monks making one, and then you're going to design your own. It doesn't have to look like this at all, by the way, but more on that tomorrow. And then here's a contemporary example of radial symmetry. You don't see it a lot in contemporary art, just because it's usually not as interesting as informal balance. Asymmetrical balance. Now this is a piece by Jasper Johns. He was I think he was part of the abstract expressionist movement, but think like 1950s, 60s-ish, and it's called Target with Four Faces. So it's radially balanced because it draws you into the center, and radiates out. Now there are these pieces up here that are not included with this, and here in a second you're going to have to analyze some artwork, and so something like this you want to go with the majority. So the majority is radially balanced. This up here you can disregard for the analysis. Alright, so real quick, I have like 2 minutes left. Asymmetrical balance, I'm just going to talk about really quickly. Most pieces of art are asymmetrically balanced. So this gives you viewers the same comfortable feeling of ease, but instead of balancing things like to like, it counterbalances things. So we'll get into it. I'm trying to go really fast. Asymmetrical balance is usually more interesting, but it can be more difficult to achieve, so it's harder to plan out. So for example, asymmetrical balance can occur when several smaller items on one side are balanced by a larger item on the other side, or when smaller elements are placed farther away from the center than larger elements. A dark shape can be balanced by several lighter shapes. So let's look at 2 examples. The first one is Van Gogh's Starry Night. If we were to analyze this for balance, look at this piece. What is the heaviest thing in this piece? Definitely this tower here, right? Tower is very heavy. The tower's on the left side. It's very heavy, but it's balanced by several lighter shapes on the right side. So you are going to have to analyze some work for balance. Lots of little shapes can balance out a big shape, or a color, right? So this dark color is balanced by all these little lighter colors. And then lastly, this is by Mary Cassatt. What's the heaviest part of this piece? Most people would say the man right here, right? Because he's in dark clothing, he's closer to you. His heavy weight is balanced by all these lighter colors on the left side. So the woman's dress, the child, the sail right here. There's more of these. They take up more space, but they balance the weight of him. So you're going to have to do this on your own in just a second. There's some concluding remarks. Down here at the bottom, though, remember this. So determining if an artwork is symmetrical or asymmetrical is pretty easy. Describing why can be harder. You have to use your intuition. So look at the relationship between colors, values, textures, lines, shapes,